Rain ran down her face, not from the sky but from the spit that hit her cheek. 2 men shoved her into the street mud. "Forged signature," they said. "That's jail talk," she didn't answer. The hum of the telegraph carried faintly from afar. The man repairing the line looked up. Their eyes met. The woman lost her faith, the man his silence. Between them the wind carried something not yet named. The first sound was a fist on wood, 3 hard knocks, no hesitation. Eli Marin opened the door halfway and froze. A woman stood there, soaked through. Hair plastered to her face, one hand pressed against her ribs like she was holding something in. Behind her, the sky was a low bruise. Wind carrying the faint hum of the telegraph line from town. She didn't wait to be asked. "Just a place to stay till morning," she said. Voice even, eyes steady. No tremor, no plea. Eli looked past her. No horse, no wagon. Just the trace of boot prints half swallowed by dust and the smell of metal rain coming. She shouldn't have been this far out alone. Nobody decent ever was. "There's the shed," he said after a moment. She nodded once, neither grateful nor offended. When she turned, the porch light caught the edge of her sleeve, torn, stiff with dried blood. Not hers, maybe. He couldn't tell. He should have shut the door then, same as he'd done 100 times before when trouble came walking, but he didn't. From the kitchen window he watched her cross the yard, the blanket of dusk swallowing her shape until only her shadow moved against the pale boards of the shed. The telegraph wire sang somewhere across the flats, a low, lonely hum that never really stopped even when the wind did. Eli poured himself coffee, gone bitter from sitting all day. Tried to focus on the sound of the stove ticking as it cooled, but the image of her, hands red to the wrist, wiping them clean with a rag she meant to keep, wouldn't leave his mind. He went out again. She was sitting on a crate, back straight, wet coat steaming near the lantern she'd found. Her eyes lifted when he stepped in. "You'll freeze in here," he said. "I've done colder," she answered. No defiance, just fact. He hesitated, then set a folded blanket on the workbench beside her. "Use that. Rain'll turn to ice before dawn." She didn't thank him, just met his eyes for the first time. Something unreadable there. Fear held still by sheer will. A silence stretched, thick as the smell of wet dust between them. When he stepped out again, he left the door unlatched. By the time he reached the porch, rain had begun to fall, soft at first, then sharp. He leaned against the post, listening to the wire hum over the storm. Whatever she'd brought with her, blood, lies, bad luck, it was here now. And as he pulled his coat tight, Eli knew one thing with the kind of certainty that comes too late. By morning, it wouldn't just be her storm anymore. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving mud thick as glue and the air raw with iron and smoke. Clara Dayton was already outside, sleeves rolled, hauling a dented pail from the trough when Eli stepped from the house. The yard was still half flooded. Water pooled under the fence rails, glinting with flakes of straw and ash. "You don't have to start before light," he said. "Best time," she answered, setting the pail down. "Ground's soft. Prints show what came by." Eli followed her gaze. Hoof marks, 2 horses, 1 shod, 1 bare. He crouched beside them, touched the edge of the track. "Not mine." "No," she said, almost to herself. "Mine neither." The words hung between them. He didn't ask who might be following, and she didn't offer. Instead, she picked up the bucket and limped toward the barn. He watched her a moment, then went after her. Inside, the place smelled of damp hay and old leather. The mare was skittish, eyes rolling white. Clara moved calm and steady, whispering under her breath. Eli saw the way she handled the animal, like she'd done this work before somewhere that hadn't been kind. After a while, he said, "You handle her better than most men I've hired." "Men talk," she said. "Horses listen," he half smiled. "Fair." By midday, the sun burned off the fog. They patched the south fence together, side by side, sleeves rolled, dust clinging to their wrists. A telegraph pole leaned halfway down the hill, wire sagging low. Eli grumbled, fetched the ladder. Clara steadied it while he climbed. The wire sang faintly under his glove, a vibration that traveled bone deep. "You know the code?" he asked. "Enough," she said. "I used to send grain orders east, back when folks could still pay for what they ate." Eli nodded. "Briggs has men talking about a new line near the river. Says the county wants to reroute. Would cut through your pasture," she said quietly. "Would take it," he replied. The ladder shifted. She caught it quick, knuckles whitening. Neither spoke after that. Later that afternoon, Sheriff Briggs himself rode up the ridge with a deputy and a county seal folded in his coat pocket. His smile was all surface. "Afternoon, Marin. Miss." He tipped his hat toward Clara, holding her gaze a breath too long. "Heard you've got help these days." "Help's hard to find," Eli said. "Harder to keep," Briggs replied. "Seems there's questions back east about a certain operator named Dayton. Wire fraud, they say. Bad handwriting, maybe." Clara stood still, eyes flat.
"You have paper for that?"
Briggs grinned. "Not yet. Word travels faster than ink." He looked to Eli. "Keep your books clean. County's watching." They rode off slow, dust rising behind them. For a long moment, the ranch was silent except for the steady ping of the telegraph wire in the wind. Eli finally said, "You got business with the law?" "No," she said. "But sometimes the law's got business with me." That night the wind changed, warmer now, carrying the scent of mesquite smoke from the valley. In the kitchen, Clara worked the key on the telegraph set, testing the wire. The soft clicks filled the room like a heartbeat. Eli watched from the doorway. "What are you sending?" "Nothing yet," she said. "Just making sure someone's listening." He nodded once, poured 2 cups of coffee, and set one beside her. They sat in the thin lamplight, neither speaking, the wire humming between silences. When the message came through, 3 short bursts and 1 long pause, she froze. Eli saw her face change just slightly. "What is it?" She tore the strip from the receiver, folded it once. "A delay at the county bank," she said. "Your loan request didn't clear." He stared at her a long time, the truth of her tone sharper than the lie itself. Outside, wind scraped against the tin roof. Eli stood, reached for his hat, and checked the oil in the lamp. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "We'll ride to town at first light." Then he blew the lamp out, leaving her in the soft dark with the ticking wire and a name she could no longer keep. The heat came early that week. Dry wind cutting across the flats, turning everything to dust before noon. Eli Marin rode fence at first light, the sky already white at the edges. Half his herd had drifted toward the river for what water was left, leaving trampled grass and a smell of copper in the air. Clara met him halfway down the slope with a ledger tucked under one arm. Her face was drawn tight from lack of sleep. "Feed store's cutting credit," she said. "Briggs filed claim on the river pasture. Says the county line moved." It didn't. She opened the ledger, showed him the stamped notice folded between the pages, the ink still wet enough to smudge. "They think it did." He took the paper, studied the mark. County seal pressed deep, but the signature wrong. "Briggs is doing, sure as drought." Eli tore the notice in half and let it fall. A lie's only paper until men believe it. Clara didn't look away. He'll make them believe it. They worked in silence after that, mending a post that wouldn't hold. The dust rose around them, fine as flour, catching in their throats. Eli's hands were blistered raw. Hers shook when she tied the wire. She didn't mention it, and neither did he. By late day, they were back at the house. The telegraph key sat still on the table, brass polished from use. Eli poured water from the jug and watched her glance at the machine like it might turn against her. He said quietly, "You sent anything I don't know about?" Her hands froze. "I tried to warn the bank. To tell them you never signed the claim." He waited. "They answered," she said. "Said your debt's been bought by the sheriff himself." Eli leaned back, jaw tight. "Bought or stolen, it's the same." She reached into her coat and drew a folded slip of wire paper, edges singed from the stove. "I shouldn't have read it. It came through this morning. He used my old line code, Eli, my name." He stared at her. "You told me you left that work behind." "I did," she said. "But he didn't, he's using it. Makes it look like I sent the order." The words landed heavy. Eli walked to the window, the wind outside bending what grass was left. "Then it's my fault you're tangled in it." "No," she said softly. "It's mine for staying." He turned, eyes hard. "You think leaving fixes it? Man like Briggs doesn't stop till he owns what he touched." She flinched at the edge of his voice, then steadied herself. "Then we take it back. The proof, the land, whatever's left of it. There's a copy in the county office. I'll get it." "You won't," he said. "He'll be waiting. Then he'll see me coming." He almost smiled, then didn't. "You can't outrun the man who writes the law." She looked down at her hands, cracked and raw from fence wire. "Maybe not, but I can make him read the truth once." The light shifted then, late sun cutting through the window, striking dust into gold for half a breath before fading. Eli crossed to the table, picked up the torn notice from the dirt, brushed it clean, and folded the pieces together like something still worth keeping. He set it beneath the telegraph key and weighted it with his empty cup. "Tomorrow," he said, voice rough, "we ride to town." He blew the lamp out and the room fell to silence, broken only by the wire's faint hum, steady, unblinking, waiting for what came next. The courthouse stood on the bluff above the river, pale wood bleached by sun, shutters rattling in the wind. Clouds were building low and dark from the south, a hard rain promising to break before evening. Eli Marin tied his horse at the rail, the air close with heat and mud. Clara stepped down beside him, hat pulled low, the faint smear of dried blood still at her collar. Inside, the room smelled of tobacco and sweat. Sheriff Briggs stood by the clerk's desk, coat buttoned to his throat, county papers fanned neatly before him. Two townsmen leaned against the wall, watchers pretending to be witnesses. "Didn't expect you to ride in, Marin," Briggs said. "Thought you'd let the land go quiet." Eli brushed the dust from his gloves. "I came to see what you paid for it." Briggs smiled. "Same as anyone, just sooner." He turned to the clerk. "Record shows deed transfer under my name. Filed proper." Clara laid a second folded paper on the counter. "Then file this beside it." The clerk glanced at her, hesitant. She met his eyes, steady. "County code requires proof of debt purchase." "That line's blank." Sheriff signed twice. Briggs's expression didn't change, but his hand moved toward the desk's edge, close to the pistol half hidden by his coat. "You got nerve, miss." "Maybe forget who keeps order here." Eli stepped forward, close enough to smell the man's cologne mixed with dust. "Order ain't the same as ownership." The wind pushed the shutters open. The first drop of rain hit the floor between them. Outside, thunder rolled like a train through the valley. The clerk hesitated, then reached for the pen. "If this second record's genuine, we'll need verification." "It's genuine," Clara said. "Wire copy came through the state line office at dawn." Briggs's jaw clenched. "You stole that code," she met his stare. "You taught it to me." The silence that followed was heavier than the thunder. Briggs moved fast, hand snapping for the gun, but Eli's faster. The old Colt stayed holstered. Instead, he swung the ledger up, catching Briggs's wrist hard enough to knock the weapon loose. It hit the floor, fired once, the shot cracking the window glass and taking a splinter off the judge's chair. The two townsmen backed away, one shouting, "Hold!" The clerk froze mid-step. Briggs stood gasping, wrist bent wrong, sweat beading at his hairline. Eli didn't raise his voice. "You'll sign withdrawal of claim." Briggs spat. "You think this changes anything?" "County still needs the river right." "Then they'll pay fair," Eli said. "Not through you." Clara moved to the desk, her hands trembling only once as she turned the page toward him. Briggs stared at it, breathing through his teeth, then pressed his name down with his left hand, ink blotting like blood in the paper's crease. Outside, the rain came full, hammering the roof. Eli took the deed, folded it once, and handed it to Clara. She held it close, thumbs smearing the edge of the wet signature. Briggs leaned back against the wall, eyes wild but beaten. "You'll hang for this before it's done," he muttered. Eli shook his head. "No, I'll work the land. You'll remember what it cost." They left the courthouse to the sound of rain swallowing gun smoke. The townsmen followed them out, faces pale, not meeting their eyes. Down by the hitch rail, the horses stood slick with water, restless. Eli untied his reins, handed Clara the folded paper, and said, "Keep it dry." He swung into the saddle, mud splashing his boots. She mounted beside him, the storm driving sheets of water across the open ground. Neither spoke as they rode out of town. At the ridge, Eli stopped long enough to tear the forged notice in two and let it go. The wind took it, scattering it across the flooded road. He watched the paper vanish, then turned his horse toward home, rain running down his coat like penance that wouldn't wash off. Spring came thin but steady, the kind that didn't announce itself so much as wear the winter down. The river swelled past the lower fence, carrying silt and broken branches toward the valley. Eli Marin rode the boundary each morning, checking posts, counting what cattle had survived the drought. The grass was new, but the soil still remembered last year's thirst. The courthouse incident hadn't been spoken of since. Briggs kept to town, nursing his hand and his pride, while the county judge, pressed by gossip and Clara's neat wire record, quietly voided every claim filed under the sheriff's seal. No one said the word corruption, but it hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. At the ranch, work filled the silence. The telegraph line ran clean again, humming soft through the afternoon heat. Clara had rewired half the posts herself, her handwriting now the only signature on the ledger. She didn't mention her old name anymore. The townsfolk, when they came, called her the woman at Moran's place, and that was enough. Some evenings she'd sit on the porch mending harness straps while Eli salted hides by lamplight. They spoke little, just the measured rhythm of work shared between two people who'd learned the worth of quiet. Once, as she stitched, her needle slipped and drew a bead of blood. Eli looked up from his bench, but she only pressed the cloth to her finger and kept sewing. "You could stop," he said. "I could," she answered, eyes on the leather, "but it'd still need mending come morning." He smiled faintly at that and went back to his task. Later, when the evening cooled, she brought out 2 cups of coffee, black and thin. They sat without talking, listening to the wires hum stretch across the valley. From somewhere upriver came the sound of frogs, and beyond that, wind through the mesquite. "I fixed the boundary marker," she said after a while. "The one the flood took." "You didn't have to," Eli replied. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." The lamp sputtered once, then steadied. In its light, her face looked older and younger at the same time. Lines softened, eyes clear. She reached for the coffee, her hand brushing his sleeve. Neither pulled away. Days later, they rode into town together to register the deed under both their names. The clerk didn't look surprised, only asked how they'd spell it. Clara wrote it herself, slow, deliberate, her letters clean and even. Eli watched, hat in hand. When she finished, he touched her shoulder lightly and said, "Let's go home." On the ride back, the sky was clear, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and juniper. They passed the ridge where the old telegraph pole still leaned, half bent but holding the wire just the same. Clara glanced up at it and smiled, small, private, almost invisible. At the house, Eli unsaddled the horses, rubbed them down, then stacked fresh wood by the door. Inside, Clara lit the lamp and set a pot of beans on the stove. He washed at the basin, the water cold, the dirt coming off slow. When he looked out the window, the land stretched quiet and whole again. No papers, no seals, no names left to fight over. He dried his hands on a rag, stepped out to the porch, and closed the door behind him. The wind moved across the fields, low and steady, carrying the faint hum of the telegraph toward the hills. Eli sat, boots on the rail, and let the sound settle in his chest like something earned. He stayed there till dark, the lamplight behind him steady, the wire still singing through the night. Then he rose, went inside, and latched the door gentle as a man does when he means to keep what's his.